The first thing I noticed was the pain, a dull, distant throb pulsing through my body like a second heartbeat. Then the antiseptic sting of hospital air filled my nose. My eyelids fluttered open to blinding white lights above me, their glare cutting through the haze of anesthesia still clinging to my brain. A nurse appeared at my bedside, her scrubs a soft blue blur. "Mr. Calloway?" Her voice was gentle but detached. "You're in recovery. Everything went well." She placed something cold in my hand, my phone. "This was in your belongings." I blinked at the screen. My vision swam, but the notification was unmistakable. One missed call. One voicemail. Her name. My thumb moved before my mind could catch up, pressing play before I even realized what I was doing. And then her voice. Not frantic, not uncertain, just calm, resolved, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore." The heart monitor beside me spiked, its rhythmic beeping turning jagged. The nurse glanced over, but I barely noticed. "I didn't want to tell you in person because I knew you'd try to stop me." A quiet, almost apologetic pause, then, "It's better this way." The phone slipped from my fingers. The pain in my chest had nothing to do with surgery, because she hadn't just left. She'd waited until I was strapped to a hospital bed, weak and drugged and utterly defenseless. And then she walked away. I should have seen it coming, but isn't that what everyone says after the bomb goes off? When you're sifting through the wreckage of your life, it's easy to spot the warnings you missed, the loose wires, the ticking you dismissed as ordinary. We met in college. She was the kind of woman who made you believe in love at first sight, not because she was perfect, but because she was real. The way she'd laugh too loud at stupid jokes, or how she'd chew her lip when concentrating. She was the first person who ever looked at me like I was worth something. For years, she was my anchor. When my dad died suddenly, she held me through the nights I couldn't breathe. When her promotion demanded 80-hour weeks, I learned to cook her favorite meals so she'd remember to eat. We weren't just in love, we were a team. At least I thought we were. The back pain started 2 years ago. A dull ache at first, then sharp stabs that left me gasping. "It's just stress," I'd say, popping ibuprofen like candy. But the MRI didn't lie. A herniated disc pressing on my spinal cord. "Surgery's your best option," the neurosurgeon said, tapping the scan. "But recovery will be brutal." That night, she rubbed my shoulders like she always did when I was tense. "We'll get through this," she promised. But her hands felt different, lighter, like she was already pulling away. I missed the signs, how she stopped asking about my physical therapy appointments, the way she'd forget to pick up my prescriptions. Once, I caught her staring at me with an expression I couldn't place. Not anger, not sadness. Something worse. Resignation. "Everything okay?" I'd asked. She forced a smile. "Just tired." The week before surgery, I came home early to find her crying in our walk-in closet. She jerked away when I touched her. "It's nothing," she snapped, wiping her face. "I'm just overwhelmed. I should have pressed, should have known, but I was too busy being afraid of the scalpel, the rehab, the possibility I might never lift my daughter again at her wedding. Funny how the thing that terrified me most wasn't even on my radar. Not the surgery, not the pain, but the woman sleeping beside me every night, quietly counting down the days until she could walk away, and making sure I couldn't follow. The last month before the operation felt like watching a storm roll in from a distance, the air thick with tension, the horizon darkening at the edges. I told myself it was just pre-surgery nerves, that we were both stressed, that things would go back to normal once I recovered. But normal had already left the building. Her phone was the first red flag. She'd always been careless with it, leaving it on the kitchen counter, letting our toddler play with it. But suddenly, it was glued to her hip, screen perpetually face down. One night, I woke at 2 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty. I found her in the living room, bathed in the blue glow of her phone. She locked the screen so fast she nearly dropped it. "Who texts at this hour?" I asked. "Just work," she said, but her voice had that pitch it gets when she lies. The argument started soon after, not the heated, cathartic fights of our early years, but cold, clinical exchanges. She'd sigh dramatically when I asked for help tying my shoes as my back pain worsened, roll her eyes when I needed the car seat adjusted so I could drive without agony. You're being paranoid, she said when I asked if something was wrong. I'm just tired of talking about your back all the time. The Monday before my surgery, I caught her crying in the shower. When I stepped in to hold her, she stiffened like I'd burned her. I can't do this right now, she hissed, wrapping herself in a towel like armor. That night, I lay awake listening to her pack an overnight bag. Just some things for the hospital waiting room, she explained without meeting my eyes. But the bag was too big. And why was she taking her jewelry box? The morning of the operation, she drove me to the hospital in silence. At the admissions desk, she kept glancing at her watch. You'll be here when I wake up? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Of course, she said, squeezing my hand too tight. But when the anesthesiologist asked for my emergency contact, she hesitated before reciting her number, like she was already practicing saying it for the last time. As they wheeled me toward the OR, I turned my head to catch one last glimpse of her. She was already walking away, heels clicking down the linoleum like a countdown. The last thought I had before the drugs pulled me under wasn't about the risks of surgery or the months of rehab ahead. It was that she hadn't kissed me goodbye. The hospital gown crinkled as I shifted on the pre-op bed, the thin fabric doing nothing to stop the chill creeping through me. Nurses moved around the room with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, adjusting IV lines, asking the same questions over and over. Any allergies? When did you last eat? Does your wife have your medications list? Each mention of her sent a fresh wave of unease through me. She'd been acting strange all morning, fidgeting with her purse strap, checking her phone every 30 seconds, her smiles tight and unconvincing. Are you okay? I asked as she helped me into the wheelchair for transport to the OR. Her hand froze on my shoulder for half a second too long. Just worried about you, she said, but her eyes darted toward the exit. The orderly started pushing me down the hall. She walked beside us, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm against the tile. Halfway to the operating suite, her phone buzzed. The way her entire body tensed told me everything. I need to take this, she said, already stepping away. Wait. I reached for her hand, but she was already out of reach. You'll be here when I wake up? She looked at me then, really looked at me, and in that moment I saw it. The goodbye she couldn't say out loud. The nurses have my number, she said, and then she was walking away, phone pressed to her ear. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took hold was the anesthesiologist's calm voice. Count backward from 10 for me, and the crushing weight of understanding settling in my chest. She wasn't coming back. I fought the drugs as long as I could, clinging to consciousness like it might change anything, but the blackness came anyway, thick and suffocating, swallowing me whole with the taste of betrayal already bitter on my tongue. When I surfaced hours later, my mouth cotton dry and my body screaming, the first thing I saw was the clock. 4:37 p.m. The surgery had taken 3 hours. She should have been here. The nurse noticed me stirring. Mr. Calloway? Your wife left this for you. She held out my phone, her expression carefully neutral. One voicemail. I knew before I pressed play. Knew as surely as I knew the feel of my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. The room tilted when her voice came through, calm, measured, rehearsed. The voice of someone who'd been planning this for months. I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. Around me, machines beeped, nurses murmured. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried. And in that sterile hospital room, with my fresh stitches and my shattered heart, I realized she hadn't just left me. She'd made sure I was helpless first. The nurse had barely left the room when I pressed play again. I needed to hear it, needed to be sure this wasn't some anesthesia-induced nightmare. Her voice filled the cold hospital room, so familiar it made my ribs ache. I know this is cruel. A pause. The sound of her swallowing hard. But watching you become this shell of yourself these past months, I can't do it anymore. A machine next to me beeped faster as my pulse spiked. The rational part of my brain screamed to stop the message, but my finger stayed frozen against the phone. You were supposed to get better after the first surgery, then the second. Now this? Her exhale shuddered through the speaker. I didn't sign up to be a nurse, James. I'm 34 years old, and I feel like my life is over. The clinical detachment in her tone was worse than any anger. This wasn't some impulsive decision. Every word had been weighed, measured, and rehearsed. I've packed my things. The lawyer will email you the paperwork next week. A car horn blared in the background. She was already somewhere else moving on while I lay trapped in a hospital bed. Don't try to call me. There's nothing left to say. The message ended with a finality that stole the air from my lungs. No, I'll always care about you. No, I hope you recover well. Just silence. I played it a third time, then a fourth. Each repetition carved the words deeper into my bones until I could taste them, the bitterness of her resentment, the metallic tang of abandonment. A young nurse bustled in to check my IV. Your wife stepped out? She asked cheerfully as she adjusted my morphine drip. The heart monitor betrayed me with a jagged spike. Something like that, I managed through clenched teeth. When she left, I stared at my reflection in the black hospital TV screen, pale, hollow-eyed, tubes snaking from my arms like some medical experiment gone wrong. Is this what she saw? Not the man who worked 80-hour weeks to pay for our dream home, not the husband who memorized her coffee order for 15 years. Just a burden. I opened our text thread. The last message was from me yesterday. Don't forget to pack my charging cord. Love you. Her reply sat there, unread until now. K. The cursor blinked mockingly as I typed and deleted 7 different responses. In the end, I settled on the truth. You picked the one moment I couldn't chase you. That's all I need to know. Then I blocked her number before I could regret it. The morphine drip couldn't touch this kind of pain. Every time a nurse entered my room, I caught their quick glance at the empty visitor's chair, their barely concealed pity when they realized no one was coming. The shift change brought a fresh wave of humiliation as day nurses asked evening staff, "Has his wife called?" And the answer was always silence. By the second day, my surgeon stood at the foot of my bed, frowning at my chart. Your blood pressure's concerning, he said, tapping his pen. Are you in more pain than you're admitting? I almost laughed. The incision in my back was nothing compared to the raw, gaping hole where my marriage used to be. At night, the hospital noises morphed into a cruel soundtrack. The wheeze of the blood pressure cuff became her sigh when I asked for help. The squeak of orderly shoes down the hall turned into her retreating footsteps. Sleep brought no relief, only feverish dreams where I chased her through endless hospital corridors, my surgical wound splitting open with every step. The physical therapist arrived on day 3, her cheerfulness like sandpaper on my nerves. Let's get you standing, she chirped, oblivious to the way my hands shook. As she helped me upright, white-hot pain lanced through my spine, but worse was the realization. There was no one at home to help me through this. No one to bring me water when the pain meds made me nauseous. No one to change my bandages when the stitches wept. That afternoon, a social worker appeared with a clipboard. We need to discuss your discharge plan, she said gently. Is there someone who can... My wife left me during surgery, I interrupted, the words jagged in my throat. There's no one. The silence that followed was the first honest moment I'd had in days. She recovered quickly, sliding into professional mode. I'll arrange home health visits, she said, but her eyes told the real story. This was the part of healthcare they didn't put in brochures, the human wreckage that couldn't be fixed with stitches or pills. That night, I finally broke. Not the dramatic, cathartic sobbing I expected, but a quiet unraveling, tears leaking silently as I stared at the ceiling, my body trembling with the effort of containing the scream building in my chest. The heart monitor went wild, bringing nurses running, but there was nothing they could do. The truth settled over me like a shroud. I wasn't just recovering from spinal surgery. I was learning how to breathe without the person who'd been my oxygen for 15 years. The phone burned in my hand for days. 3 months later, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, tracing the scar along my spine with trembling fingers. The surgeons had done their job well. The wound was clean, healing. The deeper injury refused to scab over. I still slept on my side of the bed, still reached for her in the dark, still heard phantom rings from her old phone number. But the pain had changed shape, less like a knife between the ribs, more like weather moving through me. The dog learned to bring my slippers when my back seized up. The neighbors left casseroles with Post-it notes that said, "Just because." My physical therapist high-fived me when I lifted 5 pounds without wincing. Small victories. Small. One rainy afternoon, I found her favorite coffee mug at the back of the cupboard. For the first time, I didn't smash it against the wall or weep into its emptiness. I simply washed it and made myself tea. That's when I understood the true cruelty of her timing. She hadn't just abandoned me at my weakest, she'd robbed us both of the chance to see who I'd become on the other side of this. The man who could change his own bandages, who learned to distinguish between different types of silence, the hollow kind, and the kind that holds space for something new. The last time I checked our shared cloud storage, all her photos were gone, but she'd missed one, a snapshot of us at the beach, her laughing while I pretended to drop our ice cream cones. I didn't delete it. Let it stay. Let it be true even if it's no longer true. The scar tissue would always be there, both kinds. She waited until I couldn't fight back to show me who she really was, and in the end, that was the gift. I drafted 100 messages, angry ones, pleading ones, coldly analytical ones, dissecting every lie by omission. In the end, I wrote just 3 lines. You knew the anesthesia would prevent me from fighting. You knew the pain meds would dull my anger. That wasn't just leaving, that was a tactical retreat. My thumb hovered over send for an hour before I deleted it. What was the point? She'd already calculated every possible reaction, every pathos-laden appeal I might make. Silence was the only weapon she hadn't accounted for. Then her lawyer's letter arrived. Not even an email, actual parchment-thick stationery detailing how she'd generously let me keep the house, still mortgaged to the hilt, the medical debt, now entirely mine, and the dog who'd always liked her better. The courier waited expectantly for my signature, his foot tapping like this was just another Thursday. I scrawled my name with shaking hands, the pen ripping the paper. That night I dreamt of tearing the document to shreds, but in the dream the pieces kept reforming, her words always finding their way back. At my first post-op follow-up, the nurse practitioner frowned at my chart. Your incision's healing well, she said, but your cortisol levels look like you've been in a war. I almost laughed. She didn't know about the landmine still buried in my home, the empty side of the closet, the missing toothbrush, the way our Spotify Duo account had quietly dissolved into free tier overnight. The final text came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know you hate me. Just tell me you'll be okay. I watched the typing bubble appear and disappear 3 times before I powered off my phone. Let her wonder. Let her imagine me broken or thriving or anything in between. The truth was, I didn't know the answer myself.